1/3 of Gen Z believes they will never own a home. Not that it will be difficult, not that it will take longer than their parents, never. That is not pessimism, that is a generation looking at the actual numbers and concluding that the destination simply does not exist for them anymore. And they are not wrong. We are living through one of the strangest economic periods in the history of the Western world. The rules that built middle-class life for the previous two generations, get the degree, get the job, buy the house, trust the pension, retire at 65, are producing dramatically different outcomes for the generation following them, and the gap between what was promised and what is being delivered is widening every single year, quietly, without anyone in power saying it plainly enough to be useful. At the same time, we are living in the most extraordinary moment in history for an individual to build genuine wealth independently. The tools available right now, the systems, the tax structures, the investment vehicles, the ways to generate income outside of a single employer are better than they have ever been at any point in human history. The information is free, the platforms are accessible, the barriers between competence and income have never been lower. But most people are doing neither. They are following the old rules in a world that has changed, confused about why those rules are not producing the results they were supposed to, and being sold false shortcuts by people who have identified their confusion as a business opportunity. Before I say anything else, I want to deal with something, because if you have spent any time on social media around the subjects of money, investing, building wealth, making it as a young person, you will have noticed that everyone is selling you something. Everyone has a course, everyone has a system, everyone has cracked the code, and is willing to share it for 3 payments of $97. The Instagram accounts showing the Lamborghini and the rented villa and the laptop on the beach and the 6-figure month screenshot taken in a toilet cubicle of a WeWork. The YouTube channels with the thumbnails of men pointing at large numbers. The TikTok gurus who made their money selling courses about how to make money selling courses. Let me tell you something clearly. There is no get-rich-quick scheme. None of it exists. There is no secret system the wealthy are hiding from you. There is no code that has been cracked and is being exclusively distributed to people who buy the right program. What you are looking at on social media is a curated performance of wealth designed to sell you the idea that the performer has figured out something you have not. Most of them have not. Most of them are making their money from the course, not from whatever the course claims to teach. Most of them are showing you the Lamborghini they rented for the day, and the house they borrowed for the shoot, and the screenshot from the 1 month that went unusually well. Social media has created an entire parallel universe of false financial reality, and it is eating the financial confidence of young people who compare their actual lives to a fiction and conclude they are failing. The lottery exists. Getting extremely lucky in the stock market at exactly the right moment exists. Inheriting significant money exists. But for the vast, overwhelming majority of people who build real, lasting financial security, the way it happened was consistent effort sustained over a long period of time, during which they felt tired and unmotivated, and like nothing was working, and kept going anyway. That is the entire secret. Hard work, sustained over time, with the right systems underneath it. Nothing more exotic or sellable than that. I am not selling you a course. I am not a financial advisor. I am 24 years old, I left university, did exactly 1 shift as a kitchen porter, quit that same day, and built my own thing from the ground up through marketing and YouTube. I come from a working class family. Nobody handed me anything. Everything I have, I built myself. I have read the finance books, I have been in the market for a while, I have made businesses work, and I have made things fail, and I have learned something from both. This video is what I have figured out. That is all it is. Now the data, because before we talk about any of this, you need to understand clearly what the situation actually is. Not the softened mainstream version, the actual situation in 2026 with the numbers behind it. In just 12 months, the share of Gen Z workers who feel financially insecure jumped from 30% to 48%. That is not gradual drift, that is a financial earthquake. Deloitte surveyed over 23,000 workers across 44 countries and found nearly half of an entire generation suddenly feeling like the ground had disappeared beneath them. They are not worried about retirement decades from now. They are worried about rent, about unexpected bills, about whether any kind of financial cushion is something they will ever actually have. 40% of Gen Z report feeling stressed or anxious most of the time, not occasionally, as their baseline condition of existence. A report published in February 2026 found that 15% of Gen Z were unemployed and looking for work, compared to 11% across all age groups. Just 28% felt confident about their path forward if they lost their job tomorrow. Oxford Economics described what is happening as a generational recession. Unemployed and economically stalled young people are blowing a $12 billion hole in American consumption, not because young people are lazy, because the entry points to independent adult financial life are less accessible than they have been at any point in the post-war era. The Federal Reserve Chair himself described the current American economy as low hiring, low firing. Companies are not laying people off, but they are not hiring either, frozen by uncertainty, which means the people trying to enter the workforce for the first time, the people with no track record and no leverage, are the ones who pay the price. The unemployment rate for 20 to 24-year-olds in the United States reached 8.3% in February 2026, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, more than double the overall rate. The Bank of America Institute found that for the first time in history, the unemployment rate for recent college graduates is edging above that of older workers. That reversal has never happened before. Prior to this, entry level was where unemployment was lowest. That has changed. In the UK, 1.2 million graduate applications were submitted for 17,000 graduate roles in the 2023 to 2024 cycle, 140 applications for every available position. Gen Z graduates are currently earning 30% less than millennials earned at the same career stage. You paid more for the degree. You are earning less from having it. And then there is the labour market question that most mainstream outlets are reluctant to address directly. In the United States, the H-1B visa program allows American companies to hire skilled workers from abroad. India accounts for 73% of all H-1B approvals. A survey of American tech workers found that nearly 2 in 3 H-1B visa holders occupy positions that were formerly held by American citizens. 1 in 5 tech workers actively fears replacement. In March 2026, the United States Department of Labor itself stated that current wage levels for H-1B workers are below market benchmarks, and that some companies hire foreign workers at reduced salaries in ways that affect the wages of American workers in similar roles. That is not a fringe position, that is the government's own Labour Department acknowledging the structural downward pressure on domestic wages. In the UK, close to 1 in 5 workers is now foreign-born. Between 2021 and 2024, the sharpest increases in employee jobs in absolute terms were among Indian and Nigerian nationals. The low-wage sectors, care work, hospitality, construction, transport, have been substantially restructured around a migrant workforce that in many cases fills roles at cost levels that make it economically rational for employers to hire from abroad, rather than raise wages to attract local workers. A Bank of England analysis found that a 10% increase in immigration reduces wages for semi-skilled and unskilled service sector workers by the equivalent of 2%. Not enormous in aggregate, not evenly distributed, it falls on the workers at the bottom of the wage distribution, the working class people of Britain and America who have the least ability to absorb it. I want to be clear about what I am saying and what I am not. This is not an argument against the individual people who come to work here. Those people are doing what any rational person would do. What this is an argument about is the structural mechanism, the people who own companies benefiting from access to cheaper labour, the costs falling on the domestic workers at the bottom of the wage distribution who have the least political power to push back. That is a description of a mechanism, not a political position, and it affects the young person trying to build a financial life in 2026 in ways that are real and documented. The housing. In the United States, median home prices rose 50% between 2015 and 2024. Wages for young workers grew 15% over the same period. Gen Z is paying 31% more for housing than their counterparts a decade ago, after adjusting for inflation. In the UK, the average home costs 7.6 times the median annual income. In 1997, 88% of local authority areas had homes selling for less than 5 times average earnings. Today, that figure is 7%. The map of affordable housing has almost entirely disappeared. 1/3 of Gen Z believes they will never own a home. The savings. 23% of Gen Z Americans between 18 and 24 have $100 or less saved. 22% cannot save anything after covering their monthly expenses. Another 23% cannot even cover their expenses in full. Nearly half a generation with either nothing saved or spending more than they earn. The average Gen Z retirement savings across the generation is $17,900. The average baby boomer has $270,000 saved. That is not a gap. That is a different financial universe, and it is the direct result of the structural conditions described above. The pension. Your grandfather had a defined benefit pension. His employer guaranteed him a specific income for life when he retired, regardless of what the stock market did. That pension no longer exists in the private sector in any meaningful form. In the UK, only 1,013 of the 6,400 final salary pension schemes remain fully open. What replaced them is a defined contribution pension where all of the investment risk that used to sit with the institution now sits with you. 62% of Gen Z investors are already being put off engaging with retirement savings because the rules keep changing. The system is failing at its most basic function. The national debt in the UK stands at £2.7 trillion, 100% of GDP. Annual interest payments of £112 billion, largely unfunded state pension liabilities of £6.4 trillion that future generations will pay through higher taxes. In the United States, Social Security faces a shortfall that, without reform, produces a 23% reduction in benefits by 2033. The people who accrued these liabilities have largely retired. The people who will pay them are in their 20s right now. The circumstances are worse than most people think. The social media performance of wealth and success is almost entirely fiction. The course sellers are selling the illusion of a shortcut that does not exist. And the institutions that were supposed to support this generation, the employer, the pension, the housing market, the state safety net, have in many cases either withdrawn their support or altered the terms without announcement. That is the first 10 minutes, that is the honest map. Now the part that actually matters. Nobody said it was going to be fair, and here is the thing. When has it ever been fair? Look at any period in history. Look at the men who came back from the First World War to a country that promised them a land fit for heroes and handed them unemployment and poverty. Look at the generation that came of age during the Great Depression with no social safety net and no bailout and no government program designed to smooth the landing. Look at every generation that has ever had to build something in genuinely difficult conditions. The conditions were difficult, they built it anyway. Not because the world was kind, because they had no choice, and because the alternative, passive resignation to a difficult circumstance, produces an outcome that is worse than the difficulty itself. You have been handed a difficult set of circumstances that is real and documented and worth understanding clearly, but understanding it clearly is different from being defined by it. The question that actually matters is not how unfair it is, the question is what you do with the cards you have been dealt, because those are the only cards available and the game does not stop while you wait for better ones. There is a saying I think about often: chasing money is like chasing a cat. If you run at a cat, it runs away. Every time. The faster you run, the faster it goes. But if you sit quietly, if you show patience, if you build something that attracts rather than pursues, the cat comes to you. It sits on your lap. It stays. Money behaves in a similar way. The people who spend their lives chasing it directly and pursuing the next get-rich scheme, the next course, the next shortcut, the next quick flip, almost always find it receding in front of them regardless of how hard they run. And the people who build something genuine, develop a real skill, create something of actual value, invest consistently and patiently over time, the money tends to accumulate around what they have built without being chased at all. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations that you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. He was a Roman emperor dealing with plagues and wars and barbarian invasions and the entire weight of an empire on his shoulders, and he understood that the only arena he could actually control was himself, not the market, not the economy, not what the politicians decided, himself, what he chose to do with the time and the circumstances available to him. That principle does not become less true in 2026. The external circumstances are difficult, your response to them is the only variable under your control, and your response is what determines the outcome. Benjamin Franklin, who came from nothing, who was the 10th son of a soap maker, who educated himself, built multiple businesses, became one of the wealthiest men in the American colonies, invented things, helped found a country. Wrote that an investment in knowledge always pays the best interest, not in stocks, not in property, in yourself, in the skill you develop, in the competence you build through sustained effort over time. Franklin understood something that the course sellers of 2026 have inverted. The investment that compounds most reliably and most powerfully is the investment in what you are capable of becoming. Everything else, the financial returns, the business income, the wealth that accumulates, is downstream of that. So what does this actually mean practically in 2026 for someone who has understood everything this video has said so far about how difficult the circumstances are? It means accepting that this game is not fair and has never been fair, and that acceptance is the beginning of a useful response rather than the end of effort. The people who spend years being angry about how unfair it is are spending years, time that is not coming back, time that the people who accepted the unfairness and got to work are using to compound their position. The anger is understandable. It is not useful for longer than a moment. It means understanding that there is no quick way to financial security. None. The people who appear to have found one either got very lucky in a way that is not reproducible, or they are performing wealth they do not have for an audience they are trying to monetize, or they are temporarily ahead of a risk that has not yet arrived. The vast majority of people who build real lasting financial security do it over 10, 15, 20 years of consistent, boring, unglamorous effort. They invest every month, they build the skill, they grow the income, they live below their means, they make no dramatic moves. They are not interesting to follow on social media. They are very comfortable in their 40s and 50s. That is the only version of the story that exists at scale. It means finding what you are good at or genuinely interested in and developing it to the level of real competence before worrying about how to monetize it. Not chasing whatever niche seems profitable this year. Not copying whatever is working for someone else on YouTube or TikTok. Finding the thing you could talk about for hours, could work on without much prompting, could develop through years of effort without it feeling entirely like suffering, and then becoming genuinely excellent at it. Because genuine excellence in almost any domain creates value, and value that you create for other people is the most reliable foundation for income that exists. Skill first, then the business model that converts the skill into money. The sequence matters more than almost anything else, and most course sellers have it exactly backwards. It means not gambling your money on individual stocks, not putting your savings into cryptocurrency because someone on Twitter told you it was going to 10 times, not leveraging money you cannot afford to lose on short-term speculation. The financial graveyard is full of people who lost what they had built over years in a single bad decision made in a moment of excitement or fear. The boring money, the money in low-cost global index funds inside tax-efficient wrappers, compounding slowly over decades, never touched, never moved around, never subjected to the excitement of a new opportunity. That money is the money that is still there in 30 years. The exciting money is almost always gone. Now, the specific tools. Because understanding the philosophy is one thing and having the practical mechanism is another, and you need both. And I want to go through this properly because most financial content either talks about mindset without the tools, or talks about tools without the mindset, and both halves are useless without the other. Before you invest a single pound or dollar, you need an emergency fund, 3 months of essential expenses sitting in a high-interest savings account that you do not touch, not invested. Not in a stocks and shares account where it could drop 30% the month your boiler breaks or you lose your job. Cash, accessible. 3 months of rent and food and essential bills. The reason this comes before investing is simple. Without it, the first financial emergency you face forces you to sell your investments at whatever price they are at that moment, which is often the worst possible moment to sell because financial emergencies and market downturns tend to arrive together. 3 months of expenses as an untouchable cash buffer is the foundation that everything else sits on. Before the ISA, before the index fund, before any of it, build the buffer first. After the emergency fund, deal with high-interest debt. Credit card debt in the UK and the US is charging interest rates of between 20 and 30% annually in many cases. No investment in the world reliably returns 20 to 30% per year. If you are carrying credit card debt and investing in an index fund at the same time, you are mathematically losing money. Pay the high-interest debt first, not the student loan. Student loan interest in the UK is tied to inflation, and the repayment terms mean most people never fully pay it back anyway. So the strategic approach is to ignore it and invest instead, not the mortgage. Mortgage interest is typically low enough that investing produces better returns than overpaying. High-interest consumer debt, credit cards, payday loans, anything above 10% interest, pay those off before you invest anything else. That is the most guaranteed 10, 15, 20% return available to you, and it requires no market knowledge at all. Once the emergency fund is in place and high-interest debt is cleared, the order is straightforward. Employer pension contributions first. If your employer matches your pension contributions, you take that match in full, before doing anything else because it is free money. 100% return on the matched portion, before you have even invested it. Then the lifetime ISA if you are eligible, and either saving for a first home or building long-term retirement wealth. £4,000 per year, 25% government bonus, the money invested in a global index fund inside the wrapper. Then the stocks and shares ISA for any remaining savings up to the £20,000 annual limit. For American viewers, the equivalent order is employer 401k match first, then Roth IRA to the annual limit, then any taxable brokerage account for amounts above that. In the UK, you have the stocks and shares ISA, £20,000 per year. Every pound of growth inside that account is completely tax-free, not tax-deferred, not taxed at a lower rate, tax-free permanently as long as the money stays inside the wrapper. If you invest £20,000 in a global index fund inside an ISA, and it grows to £200,000 over 20 years, you owe zero tax on the £180,000 of profit. Zero. And most people eligible to use this account are not using it, or are using a cash ISA earning 2% while inflation runs above that, rather than a stocks and shares ISA invested in global equity index funds. You also have the lifetime ISA, up to £4,000 per year before 50. The government adds a 25% cash bonus on everything you contribute. £4,000 becomes £5,000 before a single day of returns. Cash, added by the government. As a long-term tool for someone in their 20s, the lifetime ISA is one of the best financial instruments available in the UK, and most young people have either never heard of it properly or have not acted on it. For American viewers, the Roth IRA, $7,000 per year in 2025. Contributions go in after tax, but every dollar of growth is completely tax-free on withdrawal. If you are 22 and you maximize your Roth IRA every year at 10% average return for 40 years, the account could be worth over $3 million at retirement, zero tax on any of it, income limit under $150,000 for single filers, which covers most people in their 20s. One of the most powerful wealth building instruments available anywhere in the United States, and most young people are not using it. Inside both accounts, low-cost index funds tracking the whole global market. Not individual stocks, not sector bets, the whole market, diversified globally, held through the crashes and the recoveries without selling. The S&P 500 has averaged approximately 10% per year over the last 70 years. £200 a month starting at 22 grows to approximately £1.2 million by 62. The same 200 starting at 32 grows to approximately 450,000. The difference, £750,000, is not extra contributions. It is the decade of compound growth you missed by waiting. Time is the most valuable thing you own right now. Not money, not connections. Time. And every month you wait at 22 costs you more than the month you wait at 30, because the base that is compounding keeps growing. Now let me say something about individual stocks and cryptocurrency specifically, because social media has made both of them feel like obvious paths to wealth, and they are almost the opposite. Individual stocks. Picking individual companies you believe in and buying their shares. Sounds simple, occasionally produces dramatic returns. The problem is that the research consistently shows that over 10 and 20-year periods, the overwhelming majority of individual stock pickers, including professional fund managers with research teams and Bloomberg terminals and decades of experience, underperform a simple low-cost index fund tracking the whole market. Not because they are stupid, because the market is efficient, because by the time you have read the news about a company or watched the analyst on CNBC recommend it, thousands of professional investors have already priced that information into the stock. The edge that lets you reliably beat the market simply does not exist for the individual retail investor, and the times when individual stock picks produce dramatic returns are almost always followed by the times they produce dramatic losses, and the losses tend to arrive faster and hurt more than the gains. Cryptocurrency. The volatility of crypto markets means that for every person who bought Bitcoin early and made extraordinary returns, there are thousands who bought at peaks, held through crashes, and either sold at a loss or are still waiting to break even years later. Crypto can be a small, speculative position for someone who has fully built everything else and understands they might lose the entire amount. It is not a saving strategy. It is not an investment in the way that an index fund is an investment. It is speculation on the price movements of a highly volatile asset class that has no earnings, no dividend, no underlying business generating cash flow. Some people make money from it. Most people who get involved through social media hype lose money from it. Treat it accordingly or avoid it entirely. Do not gamble your money on exciting opportunities. Do not put meaningful savings into a friend's business idea. Do not invest money you cannot afford to lose in anything where losing it is genuinely possible. The boring money, sitting in a global index fund inside a tax wrapper, growing slowly, never touched, is the money that builds wealth over 20 years. The exciting money is almost always gone. Automate everything. Set up the monthly contribution to your ISA or Roth IRA and let it run. The people who invest consistently are not more disciplined than the people who do not. They have removed the need for discipline by automating the behavior the money leaves before they have the chance to spend it. The investment happens whether they feel motivated that month or not. That is the whole system. Set up a standing order on payday so the money moves into the investment account before you see it in your current account. What you never see, you never spend. This is not complex financial wisdom, it is basic behavioral design. Remove the decision from the equation and the behavior becomes automatic. Now, the spending side. Because the investment rate, the percentage of your income that goes into wealth-building assets rather than consumption, is the single most powerful lever available to you, and most people never examine it seriously. Track your actual spending for 1 month, not an estimate, every transaction, food, subscriptions, clothes, eating out, transport, everything. Most people who do this for the first time discover £300 to £500 or dollars per month going to things they have no strong attachment to, subscriptions they forgot they had, takeaways that feel habitual rather than enjoyable, spending on things that look different on a spreadsheet than they feel in the moment. That £300 to £500 per month invested from 22 is hundreds of thousands of pounds by 62. The spending audit is worth doing once, just once. Not to make your life miserable, but to see clearly where the money is going and decide whether it is going where you actually want it to go. Live below your means, not significantly below, not in a way that makes your life unpleasant, but below, consistently. The financial independence research, the work done on the people who build real wealth and security earlier than their peers, consistently finds that the savings rate matters more than the income. A person earning £50,000 and saving 20% builds wealth faster than a person earning £80,000 and saving 5%. The income matters, the savings rate matters more, and the savings rate is the one variable you have direct control over, regardless of what the market does or what your employer pays you. The housing situation in the UK and the US is genuinely difficult, but it is not impossible, and there are specific things worth knowing. The lifetime ISA in the UK can be used as a deposit on a first home purchase of up to £450,000. The government bonus, 25% on up to £4,000 per year, adds up to £1,000 per year in free money toward your deposit. Over 5 years, that is £5,000 from the government alone, before a single day of investment returns. If you are in your 20s and have not opened a lifetime ISA, open one today and start contributing whatever you can. The Help to Buy ISA closed to new applicants in 2019, so the Lifetime ISA is now the primary government-backed first home savings vehicle in the UK. In the United States, first-time homebuyers can withdraw up to $10,000 from a Roth IRA penalty-free for a home purchase. It is worth understanding the rules before assuming property ownership is simply off the table. Beyond the investment accounts, build a skill that generates income you own, not a salary from one employer who can restructure your role tomorrow and leave you with nothing, something you built, something you own. A service that people pay for, a channel, a company however small at the start. I left university and did one shift as a kitchen porter. One shift I left and built a marketing company and YouTube channels, and I do well from both. Not because I had connections or starting capital or a plan, because I refused to accept that the path being offered was the only one available, and I started, made mistakes, kept going, and slowly built something real. The second income stream does not need to be dramatic. It does not need to replace your salary immediately. It does not need to go viral. What it needs to do is exist and grow. A freelance skill that earns £300 a month is £3,600 per year. Invested in a global index fund from 22 over 40 years at 10% average annual return, that £3,600 a year becomes over £1.6 million. A skill that earns £500 a month extra becomes over £2.7 million. The income does not need to be large. It needs to be consistent, and it needs to start. The compounding does the rest. The specific skill matters less than people think. What matters is genuine competence that creates genuine value for other people and that you can develop and improve over time. Video editing, copywriting, web design, social media management, photography, personal training, bookkeeping, sales, marketing, coding, tutoring. Any domain where you can develop real skill and offer that skill as a service to people who need it and will pay for it. The barrier to entry for service businesses in the digital economy is essentially zero. You need a laptop, a skill, and a way to communicate what you offer to people who might want it. That is the entire business model at the start. Everything else is refinement. But I cannot say it clearly enough, do not do it for the money. Do not start a YouTube channel about finance because finance channels make money. Do not start a marketing company because you read that marketing is a high margin business. Do not chase whatever is working for whoever you follow online. Chasing money directly without the genuine skill and genuine interest underneath it produces nothing. The money runs, the cat runs. You are left tired and slightly more cynical than you were before. Find what you are genuinely good at or genuinely care about. Develop it to the level where other people would recognize the value and pay for it. Then find the business model that converts that competence into income. That sequence, genuine interest, real skill, then the money, is the only version that compounds reliably over time. Everything else is noise. Sacrifice some of what you could consume now for the freedom that investment buys later, not forever, not dramatically, but consistently. The version of life that spends everything it earns today is the version that has the fewest choices at 35. The version that invests consistently from early produces options. Options to change direction. Options to take a risk. Options to not take the job you hate because you have a financial position behind you. That is what the investment is actually buying, not retirement at 60. The freedom to choose at 35. Nobody is coming to build your financial future for you. The pension was dismantled. The housing has been priced out of reach. The safety nets are under pressure from debts this generation did not accumulate. The traditional path has changed its destination without changing its name. The map is wrong. But the game has also never been more open to someone who understands what is actually happening and decides to respond with work rather than with grievance. The tools are there, the information is free, the barriers to building something are lower than they have ever been. The only real question is what you do with the circumstances you have been given, whether you spend the next 10 years angry about how unfair it is, which it is genuinely more than any previous generation in the post-war era, or whether you accept the unfairness as the starting condition and get to work. The cat does not come to the person who chases it. The cat comes to the person who sits quietly, builds something worth staying around, and has the patience to let it arrive. Money is the same. Wealth is the same. The people who have it at 40 almost all built it slowly, boringly, unglamorously over a long period of time, without it being interesting enough to post about, without any single dramatic moment where everything changed, without a shortcut of any kind. Start today, not next month, not when you earn more, or when the market looks less frightening, or when you feel more ready. Today. Open the account, set up the contribution, automate it, find the skill, start building. Because the version of you that starts today is measurably, materially, irreversibly different at 40 from the version of you that waits. And the clock has been running since the day you were born. This is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. Do your own research, speak to a professional for specific guidance on your situation, but do not use that caveat as an excuse to do nothing. The most expensive thing in personal finance is not a bad investment, it is inaction, and there is no one coming to save you from it.